Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to be going over the trades I took last week. I'm going to walk through the model that I've been trading as well as the checklist that I developed to make sure that I'm taking A+ trades and staying on track. And I'll just be going through each trade from last week and seeing how well I stuck to my plan. So as of late, I've been focusing on scalping inducement setups, and I've been trying to combine ICT concepts with other factors that just make my trading more objective and don't have to think about it as much. So my ideal scenario here is if we have a market structure shift to the upside, we create a local low, trade away from it, come back down into some inducement and maybe some fair value gap in here. And then we also see some volume spike as well on a low time frame. And what I found through backtesting is that inducement combined with high volume spikes on low time frames can be really reactive and often send price higher if we're looking at a long scenario. So my checklist for this type of trade is a liquidity sweep, a volume spike on a low time frame, which I'll show examples of, supporting market structure, which is not necessarily required for me. I will trade against the trend, but I'll just look for a smaller target. I'll get into that a little more. And I also want to see a close back through the key inducement level before I enter the trade. So I'm not buying blindly into some fair value gap or anything. I want to see some strength or sign that the trade could be going in my preferred direction. And obviously I'm going to keep my risk consistent throughout all trades, risking 1R, targeting 1.5 to 2R depending on market structure. If market structure is in my favor, then I'll look for 2R. If not, then I'll look for something along the lines of 1.5. So I tried to highlight my entries and exits here so it's a little more clear. NinjaTrader does show my execution, so it'll show what candle I executed on and at what price. If you can see these pink indications right here. These blue ones, though, are a little harder to see since I have blue candles, so I'll try to change that next time around. But for the first trade of the day, using my checklist, I'm looking at this pivot as a possible inducement level. So we see a quick pop over that level with some really high relative volume. So we have a liquidity sweep and a volume spike. I wouldn't say we have supporting market structure here because we've been making higher highs and higher lows up until this point. And at this point, we close back through the inducement level right here. But my entry wasn't until this point right here. So obviously my target wasn't filled right there and I ultimately got stopped out of the trade. And you can probably see too, there's another execution right here. This was literally just a misclick. I entered right here and exited one candle later. And by the way, all of these charts in this video are a 10-second chart. So super low time frame. Again, I'm really just focusing on scalping right now. That's where I think this strategy thrives. So for this trade, I'm looking at this level as a potential inducement area. So I want to see a quick pop above this price and a close back through with some volume. We did just barely come through these highs, but on really no significant volume of note. And I think I did enter here because I was subconsciously just trying to make up for this previous loss. But just a minute or so later, I realized that this wasn't a great trade for me to take and just cut myself out of the trade. So we did have a liquidity sweep. We did not have a significant volume spike. Market structure wasn't really in our favor at this time. We were just chopping around. It wasn't very clear to me what we would be doing next. We did close back through this key level right here, but again, this really just wasn't a great trade for me to take. And the last one from Monday, again, this is similar to the last one in that I think I was just trying to force a trade right here. So we have these relative equal lows that I was looking at. We come back through, trade above it really quick, but on no significant volume. So we have the liquidity sweep. We don't have the volume spike. We do have supporting market structure at this time as we're making higher lows and higher highs, and we do close back through that key inducement level right here. So I did take this trade and was ultimately stopped out right here. And again, there was really no significant volume right here. Is not a trade I should be taking in the future. So this chart is from Tuesday. This is the afternoon session. We're coming off a downtrend right here. Put in some relative equal highs, run them super quick on some relatively high volume compared to the previous few minutes. I waited just a little bit too long to get into this trade, but ultimately still did work out in my favor. And if we're using the checklist, we got the liquidity sweep right here by just a couple of points. We got a volume spike, nothing too significant, but still somewhat significant considering the previous few minutes. We do have supporting market structure as we're in this broader downtrend, and we do close back through this key inducement level. So overall, this was a valid trade for me to take and ended up working in my favor for a good 2R. Now looking at Wednesday's trading, price opens at 930, creates a swing low, a very minor high right here, runs that pretty aggressively. So now at this point, I'm looking for a low to be created, trade away from it, and then come back through to see potential inducement. So we do create a low right here, trade away from it by about 15 points. I definitely would have preferred for price to have traded away from this a little more just to make this level more significant, but either way, it did come back down and close back pretty rapidly and on some pretty decent volume. So we got the liquidity sweep right here, volume spike, supporting market structure considering the higher highs and higher lows, and now it closed back through this key level, so now I'm targeting about 2R and close the trade right at the swing high. Now later in the day, we end up just chopping around. We put in these relative equal highs right here and then cut right through it super quick by just a couple points. We have a nice volume spike to go along with it. I wouldn't say structure is really in my favor here since it's really just kind of choppy. We do create some lower lows right here, but again, I'm really just trying to get in and out pretty quick, so I'm just targeting about 1.5R. So I'll enter once price closes back below this level, and exit for about 1.5R. Now in Thursday's trading session, price creates some higher highs and higher lows right here, starts chopping around for a bit, cuts through these relative equal lows pretty fast by about 5 points, and we see a really nice volume spike. That's the highest volume that we've seen for about 20 minutes or so. So I wait for price to close above this chop, enter right here, and since we've just been chopping around for the last few minutes or so, I'm not really too confident in market structure being in my favor, so I just target 1.5R and very luckily get out right before this massive dump. Now a little later in the day, you can see this is where I closed the previous position. We start a new downtrend, create these relative equal highs right here. So once price sweeps that liquidity and has that volume spike, structure is definitely in my favor since we're coming off this downtrend. So I know that I can at least target these local lows, which happens to line up with about 2R for me. This is where I entered short and this is where I closed. Now this one was kind of tricky. We were coming off this downtrend and now price is starting to push back up on some pretty nice volume. We put in this local high, trade away from it by about 15 to 20 points. And so price cuts through this level and closes back pretty immediately on some really high volume, the highest we've seen in about 40 minutes on this 10-second chart. And so I enter right here, and on all these trades, I'm placing my stop right above the local high that made the inducement or the local low if I'm trading long. So I entered short right here. Unfortunately, got stopped out by about maybe 1 to 2 points on here. So if I had my stop just a little looser, I would have been able to stay in and ultimately see my downside targets, but it's all good. Now in the morning session, this is pretty choppy action so far until we get this really quick pop. And so now I'm looking for a local low to be put in so we could sweep that and potentially go higher. So I actually posted about this one on Twitter and was asked why I didn't take this first inducement right here, since we did create this pop, put in this local low, trade away from it, and now cut back through and close above on some pretty high volume, which was right here. And the only reason I didn't take this is because on this initial pop right here, we had just broken the high of the day. And given that we had broken structure to the downside on a higher time frame in pre-market, you could make an argument that this is just setting up for a higher time frame inducement to the short side. So I didn't want to be a buyer right here right away. I wanted to kind of wait and see what happens and see if volume kind of continues to give me some more hints. In this case, it did. We traded through this low on some pretty high volume and closed right back through it. So in my eyes, this was kind of showing signs of strength. And since we were at this point making higher highs and higher lows for the most part, I decided to aim for 2R, which lined up pretty much with this local high. So I entered right here and closed the position right here. So those were all my trades for the week. Again, I'm really focusing on super low timeframes right here for this model. But in total, I took 10 trades. 6 of those were wins, 4 of them were losses. So that's a 60% win rate. And overall, I ended with plus 6R on the week. And if you want to look at it day by day, Monday I had no wins out of 3 trades. Tuesday I went 1 for 1. Wednesday I went 2 for 2. Thursday 2 for 3. And Friday 1 for 1. But anyway, if you found this helpful and want to see more of these, please be sure to let me know. I definitely wouldn't mind making this a regular thing since I'm always trading throughout the week. I'd be happy to cover all the trades that I took in a given week. Or if you just want to see some more of the backtesting stuff and how I arrived to the conclusion that this is a setup that I am comfortable trusting, we can definitely do some backtesting stuff. But anyways, thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one.